to the first.
Sorry, hold on one second, because it's got to catch up.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. Good morning and welcome to the first in a series of leadership speaker events being presented to you today by the Stratton Foundation. I'm Tammy Mosier, Executive Director. And before we meet our speaker, we wish to thank Burr & Burton for hosting the virtual opportunity, and to the BBA Mentors of the Success Program, supported by the Charles S. and Millicent P. Brown Family Foundation, as an opportunity to develop leadership, professional skills, and be inspired. After the presentation, we ask all teens to complete the survey that will be provided in the chat window. And now it is my privilege to introduce our first speaker in our series, Meredith Spatz. Meredith is Executive Vice President at MasterCard, philanthropist, and friend of the Stratton Foundation. She is on the board of the American Red Cross of Greater New York and also runs MasterCard's Global Women's Leadership Network. Both roles allow her to develop on her passion, which is having direct impact on people. Meredith, the floor is yours, and thank you so much for being here.
It is a pleasure. So I am going to attempt to share my screen. I had one of the great marketing folks at MasterCard help me put together a couple of slides. Can you guys see that? Are you seeing a big slideshow? Is it the full screen? Okay. I find it very weird on Zoom that you can't see what you're showing, and it always makes me a little nervous. So I'll start, but someone come in on the chat if you're not seeing something, or you think you're seeing something you're not supposed to see. But I wanted to share my background, and I wanted to keep it engaging. So I threw some slides together. Some of them are a little embarrassing, but I thought I'd walk you through my background and how I ended up on the path that I ended up on. And how I created opportunity for myself. And then I thought I would open it up for Q&A on the chat. Jason said we've got about 45 minutes. And so I'll try and get through this relatively quickly. It's a lot of years to get through, but I should be able to get through it relatively quickly. And some of what I say may resonate with you, and some of it may be totally foreign, but I will do my best. It's always fun to be first. Okay, you guys seeing the beginning? Are you seeing another slide? All right, terrific. So I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut, which is about 3 hours south, famous for two things, Yale University and pizza. I didn't do a lot with Yale growing up, but I did certainly eat a lot of pizza. I knew of Stratton, I knew of Vermont. There were some friends who would go up and ski. We where I grew up, we didn't have the means to make these weekend trips. School tried to pull some things together, but it wasn't an affordable thing at the time. But anyhow, so I grew up in New Haven, and when I was growing up there, it was not as safe as it is now. Yale's done a really beautiful job. New Haven had the highest murder rate per capita in the US when I was a kid. And so it didn't feel unsafe to me, but I was told that it was unsafe. I always knew that I didn't want to stay there forever. I knew that I wanted to do something different. So I grew up, are you seeing another slide now? Okay, it's working, so I'm not gonna ask anymore. But I grew up one of 5 kids. We ended up being 8 kids. My parents finally divorced, as you can see by this photo. They were not happy. So I grew up one of 5 kids. They didn't really have a lot of time for us. They were working a lot, and they spent a lot of time being miserable with each other. And so the 5 of us really bonded. I took on like a semi-parenting role of my 3 younger siblings. I have an older brother. And it was not really the happiest of times. I did learn a little bit about communication and how I wanted to, if I were to have a family someday, how I would do it different. And I also learned a lot about work ethic. So while they didn't really get along and they weren't really there for us, they did work really hard. You know, they showed up on time for work every day, and they, you know, they were able to put food on the table for us. And that was something, you know, that I remember. And anytime my dad could pick up extra work, he would go pick up extra work. I don't know, maybe he just didn't want to be home with my mom. That's what I thought as I got older, but I learned a lot, certainly in that situation. So I also picked up that work ethic. I started working as early as I can remember. I had a paper route. That was a thing, you guys. There were newspapers that people actually delivered to people's doors.
I mean, other than the
sorry. Then I would have to go collect the money for the newspapers. So I had a paper route, which led to babysitting at places where I would deliver the paper. I worked in an ice cream store, was actually the night manager of an ice cream store when I was in high school. I paid my way through college being a bartender. And when I left college, I joined an investment bank, which sounds very fancy and it sounds like it probably pays a lot of money, but when you're so in the hole, you need even more money. And so I continued to bartend on weekends when I graduated college. So I had that work ethic in me. School. Okay, so this is the most embarrassing photo. If anyone's seen Stranger Things, I call this my Barb photo. I was a really nerdy kid. I didn't want to like school, but I was good at school. I really wanted to be popular, like the cheerleaders and everybody else. But I was I wasn't, as you can tell by the photo. I wasn't. And I eventually became inspired by school. I had a great math teacher in 8th grade called Miss Brott. She was absolutely amazing, and I was talented in math. And there was a cute boy who had transferred into my 8th grade math class from a different town. And so I always tell her I was inspired by her, but I think also the cute boy in the class helped. And that's really in 8th grade when I started to think like, you know, okay, stop striving after this popularity thing and like focus what you're good at. And that for me at the time and still was math and math related subjects. I also discovered sports around this time. I was looking for attention in lots of places because my parents weren't giving it. And so I was trying to get attention, and I was doing stupid things like smoking cigarettes and like, I don't think cigarettes exist anymore with vaping, but I was doing stupid things to get attention. And I had a coach come to me and say, you know, there's a difference between positive attention and negative attention. And, you know, you're kind of blowing it here. That was really meaningful to me to recognize that difference and to really turn it toward the positive. And so I spent a lot more of my energy, as you know, as I said, I was a nerd, so I was doing fine in school, but I spent a lot more of my energy and discipline and work ethic on sports, and ended up being a pretty good athlete. And the combination of the sports and the academics gave me this opportunity to go to what, you know, I considered a very like prestige, fancy college. So my parents then got very excited that I was going to this fancy college, and their message to me, which I would never give to anyone. This is not a message lesson learned. This is you guys trying to see how I like kept going forward. The message to me was that since I was going to this college, which I was going to have to take out student loans and I was going to have to work while I was there, but because I was going to this fancy college, I should probably spend most of my time at college looking for somebody who I could marry who would support me. It was a horrible message, which is why I do so much for women's networks now. But I went off to college determined that that was not what my plan was going to be, and thinking my parents were nuttier than ever. And my parents were divorced now at this point. So I went to college, had a great time, and worked really hard, and ended up taking a job in investment banking right out of college. I went to an investment bank in the city. A lot of people where I went to college were moving to the city, and I thought it'd be fun to live in the city for a couple of years. And so I moved to New York, and I worked for a company which eventually became Citi, if you guys know it. And I had this really wonderful thing happen where I started in New York, but I got to live all over the world. I got to live and work all over the world. And I remember thinking like how great it was that with work, you could, bring something personal to it. So for example, if I was going on a business trip in Beijing, I would certainly go a couple of days before and spend some time doing something touristy. I'd never been out of the United States until I started work, which a lot of people think is crazy, but I'd never been out of the US. And so my career has been interesting, but being able to live and work in all these different cultures has been really meaningful for me. Now I'll just talk about my family briefly because they are my engine. So that's me. I didn't want to correct the marketing person. I don't really need to be on the top, but this is my husband, Doug. He gets a lot of, are you Aaron Rodgers? He's not Aaron Rodgers. And as he's getting grayer, as he's getting older, he's getting less of it. We had a dog named Dexter, who unfortunately is no longer with us. Then I had some twins, Gemma and Jordan, and another little guy called Nash. And then we had another dog. And my family is really what drives me. I love work, but I work for them. I don't work to be away from them. I mean, that my family is certainly the most important thing for me. And I think a lot of that comes from, coming from the kind of family that I came from. But I'm in awe of them and how they have grown up. We've spent a lot of time at Stratton, which is how I got involved with Tammy. And the reason we started spending time at Stratton is because I wanted to give them opportunities that I didn't have growing up. And so this is them now. My daughter skis about 70 miles an hour. She's absolutely amazing. My son is a junior instructor up on the mountain. And my little guy started a telemark program at Stratton with one of his former instructors who did tele. So he's in a tele program. But to me, being able to create opportunity for yourself and for the people you love is super important. I ski blues. I'm horrible. I try my best. I'm mostly a snowshoer, but I didn't put on skis until these guys were, until they put on skis. They used to ski with me, but no more. All right, so my lessons learned, and then I'll open it up for questions. This is a long time ago, the baby picture, and this is now, but these are the things that stick with me. So the first is to be adaptable. I think that, life throws lots of different stuff at you, and if you can't flex to it, it's really hard. So being adaptable, I think, is important. The second, to be bold, to take risk, to speak up. I think that comes with confidence. And I wish everyone could have confidence from day one. For me, it took me a little while to get there. And usually when people ask, if you could do something over again, what would it be? And I would have found my voice sooner, because everyone's voice means something, right? And so being bold and taking risks, really important. Diligent, we talked about it, Tammy started right on time. Most people don't show up for work on time. So if you can just do that every day, that's something, right? So, being able to be diligent and work hard, I think is critical. Curiosity. I mean, this leads, if you're curious and you're passionate about something and you follow that, that will lead to your own personal success. Maybe it's not financial success, but to be personally satisfied with what you're doing, you got to be curious and interested about it. So I think curiosity leads to passion. So I think, following that is critical. And finally, have fun. I mean, what's the point if you're not having fun? I spent a lot of time, when I was in college and I had to work full time, I spent a lot of time being angry. Like, why do I have to do this? Why, how everybody else has it so much easier than I have it. I wish I had let that go a long time. I let it go long enough ago, but I wish I did let it go even sooner, because having fun is super important. So that's all I have for you in my sort of leadership unplugged. I just wanted to share some sort of realities, and I wanted to give you guys some time to ask questions, and hopefully I have some answers.
I'm just going to start by unmuting the room so that there can be interaction. First of all, I just want to say that it's awesome that your son started a tele program at Stratton. That's really cool. I picked up tele a couple of years ago as a way to kind of like find something new for myself in my own skiing evolution. And the idea that there be some kids out there on tele skis is such a cool thought.
So I just on that, and I should have said this on the curious part, somebody recently said to me, no matter how successful you are, every year you should be purposeful about trying something new. So it's great that you picked up tele, and I started racking my brain like, oh man, I haven't tried anything new in a really long time. And then I realized I had tried some new things, but not purposefully, sort of on accident. And so I love that. I love that you learned tele, and I think that that's also a great takeaway.
So for the youth that are in the room, hearing Meredith's background, and I'm sure there's some different connections that you guys can make on different levels. Do you have any further questions for her? I know that you guys had some questions about mentorship and leadership. Does this conversation bring anything up for you?
We just asked the questions that we emailed.
Yeah, you can speak up.
The first question that I have is, do you look up to anyone for inspiration or mentorship?
So lots of people. So their mentorship, I think, is really important. And I think a lot of companies and people try and make a program out of it. I think if you're able to connect with someone, you can organically build a mentor, which I think is important and can last for a really long time. I have what I call my own personal board of directors. So there are about 5 folks who I've collected over my life, one from business school, one from my investment banking training program, one former boss, and one former colleague. I don't get them together as a board, but if I'm making a major decision, a life decision or a work, potential work change, I will call upon them. I think it's important to have people in your life who you can call upon. In my early career, there was a woman who, went out of her way to offer to mentor me and guided me, and she and I are still very close and still very much in touch. And so, I mean, she's a woman whose name you probably wouldn't know. Her name is Marge Magner. She was a banker back in the day. But I get inspiration from lots of people and lots of things, and they don't even have to, they can be small things where I'm inspired. I will tell you, just to continue on the tele skiing, my son was like 5, and there was somebody on the mountain like Jason tele skiing, and he went up to him and was like, "Hey, mister, what are you doing? That's so interesting," right? And so I think you can find inspiration in lots of people in lots of places and lots of situations. I don't have one specific inspiration. I know why I made some of the choices I made. Growing up with very little, it was really important for me to have financial stability, right? So, and I happened to be good at math, and so going into investment banking seemed to be something that made sense. Good news is it turned out to be something I became passionate about. But I do think, you know, you can be inspired and driven by things that give you internal satisfaction.
Thank you so much.
I see there's a message for you too in the chat.
Okay, can you speak more about your feelings of anger or dissatisfaction? What things do you wish you have done differently? So I said it when I wish I had let it go earlier. I was angry about a lot of things. I mean, it started with my parents. So because my mother was not very available and my dad was always at work, I ended up in like a parenting position to my 3 younger siblings, which meant that I didn't get to have as much fun. And so that made me angry. You know, there's silver linings to everything. I mean, my 3 younger siblings still look up to me, and we're super close. And I don't know that we'd have that same kind of bond. I do think that everyone owes it to themselves to work through. Like, if you're feeling anger, is there anything you can do about it? I didn't know how to work through anything at that time. I don't want to blame it on youth, but I just didn't know any better. And I found, you know, not necessarily mentors, but I found teachers and coaches and other people's parents who I could, you know, run things by, talk to, and talking things out for me is a way to be able to solve and move on, right? And so, you know, everyone's got a different method. I think if I could have done something differently, it goes back to, you know, being confident. I think I would have been more honest and transparent with the people who were trying to help me, right? Instead of, you know, holding it all in. Like, I was embarrassed that my home life wasn't great. I was, you know, it wasn't something I wanted to talk about. And I think if I had been more open about it, I would have realized, like, yeah, this isn't a great situation. Other people are in this situation. It's not just me, right? I don't know if that helps, Jim.
I had a follow-up question too. I mean, as I look at the type of students that show up for these positions of leadership, at least currently in the high school level, they're mostly female. I mean, everyone in the room other than teacher is female, and you found great success in a traditionally male-dominated field in the financial industry. What did the role of femininity play for you, and how did you navigate, you know, traditional ideas of femininity along with what it takes to be successful in a male-dominated world and kind of be a strong person? I think our girls sometimes wrestle with those juxtapositions of things. Maybe Tammy could talk to this as well. I know she's had similar experiences.
Yeah, it's such a good question. So to start, I think not enough has changed, which is why I do the Women's Leadership Network at MasterCard. You know, we don't have to wear pantyhose to work anymore. I don't know if any of you high school students know what those are, but like, aside from some of the dress code, not a lot has changed. If I am in a room with, you know, primarily men, they still ask the woman in the room, like, what are we having for lunch? What's the temperature? Why is it cold in this room? The woman always gets the questions of, you know, my male bosses always say, well, we asked the woman because we know the woman's going to fix it or get it done. It doesn't feel that way in the moment. When I was working my first job in a male-dominated industry, I remember, I'm tall, and you guys probably can't tell, but I'm 5'10". I wore flats all the time. And I remember being on the elevator with a bunch of investment bankers who were all shorter than me and had much less hair than me. And I remember like kind of looking at the tops of their heads. And I remember thinking at that moment, I'm going to wear high heels every single day, like for the next however many years. So I do. So I do. I also remember, I always worked hard. I mean, we talked about, been working my whole life. I always worked hard. And most women have been, confronted with a situation where it knocks the wind out of their security and thinking like, oh, I'm really good at this. So my example is I was working, I was getting promoted, I was working, I was getting promoted. And then I had a boss who liked me more than a friend. And it made me question, like, am I any good? Am I good at my job? This guy's been promoting me, but now it's a totally different situation. I ended up moving out of that situation quickly and getting my confidence back. But you do sometimes get knocked back a little. One thing that I think is so important for women is to have allyship in men. Someday it probably won't be needed, but I know that if I'm going into a meeting and a big decision needs to get made and I'm going to be one that asks, I'll spend some time getting the allies, because a lot of times men, and I don't think they do it on purpose, but they're more straightforward and a hammer, and you can get, you can feel like you're getting knocked down pretty quickly. Maybe women take it differently when men are delivering it. Maybe that's part of it. But getting that allyship, I think is important. And I think it starts at home. I think that allyship starts at home, right? So my older son was in like second grade, and he was doing a project at school, and the teacher asked him, it was a project about if he were starting his own company, how much would he charge to sell whatever the widget was? And he said, well, I don't know. How much are the supplies? Like, how much does it cost to make the widget? And the teacher said to him, wow, your dad must be a really good businessman. That's a really good question. And he said, actually, my mom who's a really good business person. And the teacher called me, and it's that equity at home that is the foundation, I think, of a lot of what our future is going to be. Tammy, I don't know if you have comments. I just went in a bunch of directions.
I'm nodding the whole time you're speaking. When you said speak up as a trait to kind of adopt, it really resonated with me, because I worked for an opinion research firm, and I was in a room full of about 8 or 9 men. I was 8 months pregnant, the only woman, and I didn't speak the entire time. And the president of the company pulled me out of the room and said, why aren't you speaking? And I said, well, nobody's speaking to me. And that was a trigger point for me, because as a woman, you need to be confident and be direct. And it made me also analyze the way women communicate versus the way men communicate. Women tend to be a little wishy-washy. Hey, I don't mean to bother you, but can you do this? And versus a man would say, I need you to do this task. And so it ended up, I created a newsletter for our corporation for speaking up and how to be direct and how to communicate. So spot on with feeling intimidated and, just waiting to find your space when you need to be the driver of your space, make it yours. While I have the floor, I'm going to ask you a question. My daughter Josie is a sophomore at Colorado State, and right now she's at a time of being a little impatient, wanting to make money. I want to get a job, and I keep trying to, tell her this is the time of investing in yourself. Can you speak to that, about whether it's going to college or, just the dedication to investing in yourself?
Yeah, listen, there's no rush. I mean, when I graduated college, I went straight to work. It's what I knew, and it's what I felt like I had to do. You know, the good news is work took me on some travel, but if I could do it again, I would certainly spend some time investing in myself, right? I would certainly not rush into it, just the next. Your best ideas come when you've got time to think, right? You've got to give yourself space to think about, you know, what you want to be and what you want to do, and trying lots of different things to give yourself that opportunity. And she's super lucky, right? That she's, you know, that she's, and I'm sure she's brilliant and all these other things. But it's one of those, you know, youth is wasted on the young. It's hard to tell someone to slow down, right? It's really hard, but all of us older selves would tell our younger selves to do that. It's really important.
I feel like I have that conversation with kids in high school all the time. They're in such a rush to grow up, and I wish I could go back to being young again, you know? It's like, just appreciate it's okay. Your goals will happen if you stay the right path and you keep working hard, but also enjoy the freedom and the beauty of being young and the limitless potential that lies ahead of you. You know, you don't have to feel like you have to force yourself into situations where you're pushing too hard. You need to let life happen organically to you.
And I think, you know, everyone ends up being like results driven, but you can find lessons in lots of places, right? So like you're saying, everyone wants to grow up or whatever, but if you're just actually in the moment, you can find a lesson in that moment. It's hard to do. We're a go society, you know, it's hard to do.
Mentors, do you have other questions for our guest this morning?
There was there were some questions that came in that Tammy, that you sent me. I think one of them was about why I chose to be a psychology major.
Yes.
So I'm happy to speak. I'm happy to speak to that. So when I got to college, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. So I had taken some pre-med classes. I took a lot of math classes just because they were easier for me, and I was trying to balance the GPA. And I took some psychology classes because I was told that, you know, when you apply to medical school, it's good to have something aside from just hard, you know, numbers stuff, that, you know, show that you can have some bedside manner, I guess. And I just became fascinated with the way people think, and really listening to people and understanding people. And I think probably that's been one of way more than my skills in like math and banking, being able to listen to people and relate to people and solve problems for people really comes from the psychology. And so I started taking the classes just because I enjoyed them. And then when it was time to declare a major, I realized I had, you know, I counted up, sort of, pre-med wasn't a major at the time, it is now, but I counted up, okay, I have this many math classes, this many, you know, which do I want to take more classes of? And I had more psychology classes than any other classes, and I was enjoying them. I didn't realize how stacked I had been on them. And I remember somebody saying to me, like, what are you going to do with a psychology degree if you're, you know, unless you become a psychologist? And I had no idea at the time. I didn't have an answer. But my answer now is that because I understand people and how they tick, and by the way, bartending is very helpful for this, to learn about people and understand people. That has been a driving force in my career, in helping me navigate complex situations and navigate complex personalities and navigating egos, right? It has been, you know, I don't go back to my textbooks, but it's more the learnings that I had. So the short answer is I fell into it, but it's served me well.
It's really interesting. Your story in so many ways actually mirrors my own father's experience. He was a psychology major, went into the banking industry. He actually spent a long time working for MasterCard himself as an executive within the industry. And he always said the same thing, like he has a psychology major, and actually he has his doctorate in psychology, not to practice psychology, but to practice the art of working with people and to understanding how people work. And so I think a lot of kids go into college, these guys are all upperclassmen, they're all juniors in the room right now, and they're all thinking heavily about, well, I guess Lucy's ahead of the curve, but they're all thinking heavily about like college and what to major in, and it feels like the most important decision they'll ever make and the last decision they'll ever make. And I really try and explain that like, you're not signing up for the rest of your life, you're just signing up for the next step. It's just advancing you one step forward. And then the next cool thing will come and you'll learn about yourself and you'll be able to grow from there. And it sounds like your journey was that as well.
Totally. And I would say that, unless you want to be a doctor or a computer engineer or something where you actually need hard skills. I was talking the other day about, will college as we know it exist in the same way in 10, 15 years from now? And part of it is because the cost has gone up so much. It just seems like if you want to be a business person and your parents can, instead of spending $500,000 sending you to college, they can $500,000 invest in a business. Well, and the person I was talking to was like, I definitely want my neuroscientist to go to college. You have my neurologist to go to college. Right. So there are certain things where you need like a very clear hard skill path. But aside from that, I think, the decision on what to major, I totally agree with you. I don't think it doesn't set your path. I wonder if I know your father.
Louis Pergament, probably not. He was working MasterCard in like the 80s, so probably
Okay.
not. He's
I wasn't
been
there.
on a different journey since then.
Got it.
Now I'm gonna have to send this recording to him so he can hear his name mentioned. He'll be psyched to hear his own name mentioned. Are there any other questions, guys?
I'm just going to take a quick look. I can't remember. There was one more question that Tammy sent me. I just want to make sure that. But obviously you haven't.
I'm just going to add that even at 50 something, myself, to speak with other professionals that you can relate to is so inspiring. Like that inspiration never stops. And I just have to thank you. I mean, I was writing notes and nodding, and I'd say to these mentors, that's what the mentees are looking up. They relate to you and you inspire them. And look for people in your life that inspire you, that you relate to and you can learn from. So thank you so much. You inspire me.
Thank you. And listen, if you guys, my email's easy. It's meredithspatz@yahoo.com. If you have a question or you think of something or you didn't want to ask, the first thing I'll probably say to you is like, why were you shy? You should have spoken up, because we got to train these skills from the beginning. But I won't hold it against you. I'll be happy to, field anything after the fact.
I have one more question.
Yeah, I couldn't find the email, Tammy. I'm sorry. So I don't know what the other question was.
I have one more question. I was just curious, to you personally, what do you think are like the most valuable skills you can have as a leader?
So I think being an authentic leader is important. Being someone that can empathize with their team, and that creates followership. I've been super lucky. I've had to build and I've inherited great teams over the years. But I think, what I leave them with is I just did my year-end reviews, and what grown men said to me was, multiple grown men said to me, I feel loved and supported. And so that's not something you hear a lot in financial services. And so I feel like if you can be your authentic self and actually really support people, your leadership really ends up shining through.
Thank you so much.
No, thanks for the question. I feel like I disappointed. We still have 9 minutes left.
No, this is, you were efficient and to the point. I think kids appreciate being direct and honest and not just filling up time to go around the corner, you know? I think it's good. I think it's great.
So thank you. I couldn't find the other question either. I know it was who inspired you and why you went into psychology. Something else about mentorship and leadership, I think, was a question.
One thing I'd want to point out, and you guys are well, maybe not too young, but there's a difference between something called mentorship and sponsorship. A mentor is someone who you're going to call on, right? A mentor is someone who you're looking to for advice and so forth. A sponsor is someone who knows what you're capable of and will speak up on your behalf. That doesn't mean a mentor won't do that as well, but there always ends up being confusion in the workplace about that. So an example of a sponsor would be, we're in a meeting and somebody mentions Tammy, and Jason says, Tammy's amazing. Tammy did X, Y, and Z for the school, and we love Tammy. So Jason is Tammy's sponsor, but that doesn't mean he's mentoring her. It's important to have sponsors. It's important that other people know your skills and other people will speak up on your behalf. So focusing on mentor at this time in your life, I think is important. But if you don't do a little self-promotion and a little advertising and a little like, hey, I did that, I'm accountable for that, you're not being fair to yourself. I think it's important to make sure that you have those sponsors out there. I know that wasn't the question, but I thought I'd throw it in. Okay, survey.
So I actually emailed the survey to the kids in the room because I know it'll be easier for you to click the link in your email. So that's great. Anyone who dialed in, it looks like some parents dialed in this morning, which is great. That parents came as well to hear what had to be said. But Tammy, any closing words before we send the kids off to do the surveys?
No, just thank you for bringing this to our attention. And Charlie, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything before we send the kids off, but Meredith, thank you so much.
Pleasure. My pleasure.
All right. Well, thank you for your time, everyone. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Thank you for your time, Meredith. That was awesome. Way to kick it off. All right, guys, if you can fill out that